Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. My name is Ace and I've got some more Torchlight 2 content here for you. As you can see, we are going to cover the skills that are available to the Outlander. But before I'm going to do that, make sure that you know this is beta. And even though the beta is about to change, or stop even, things are going to be able to, well, be balanced about or changed around even when this game goes live. So keep that in mind. And if you are looking for gameplay and gameplay only, you can skip to the end of this video to the outro, which will have an annotation to the playlist, and that playlist will have gameplay for every single class that Torchlight 2 has, and on top of that it also has more skill coverage from all the other classes. And if you are just interested in looking into a certain talent tree for the Outlander, time codes of course in the description box as usual. But we are going to start off with Warfare, and Warfare is basically about your weapons. It has several passives that are for the shotgun as well as pistols, but it also has abilities like rapid fire, which do require a certain weapon, as you can see at the bottom of the description box of rapid fire. And it's a very nice debuff ability. The only problem that I have with it is that it has a short range, and I prefer to have my ranged characters at a decent range, which seems to be the right thing to do in my eyes. It is quite nice to have if you are going for debuffs as abilities to start off with, as well as you can do some very nice combos with other abilities, assuming you do take your own life as a priority, including safety for yourself. And if enemies get too close, you might be able to fire a rapid fire regardless if you want to pick it up, but I personally don't like it, so this is why I didn't. Long Range Mastery, on the other hand, is a very nice passive, because it not only does the damage increase of your ranged weapons, it also increases the range of it. And it doesn't go too fast, but at the end of this skill tree, or at the end of this skill talent itself, when you have filled it up with some nice skill points, you do find a significant difference in the range that you have available to you to be able to still hit your enemies. It also increases the range and damage for your wands, so that's something to note, because wands are not the signature weapons of an Outlander, but interesting to see that it's still available. Rune Vault is your basic get out of jail free card if you are in a sticky situation. It basically allows you to do a backflip and get out of there. I do really enjoy the fact that you can blind enemies with it as well. And you might be able to do some nice debuffs with it as well. For example, you walk up to an enemy, do rapid fire, and then get out again with Rune Vault and starting your attacks once again. Chaos Burst is basically a mindless AoE spam, relatively fast, does some decent damage if you really spam it about, and it does ricochet off walls and such. So it doesn't really take too much of a brain to spam this ability for victory, but you do have to enjoy spamming then to make that ability worth your time. Cursed Daggers, damage over time, as well as a very nice debuff, because this is a debuff that reduces the damage that the enemy can do to you or your allies. So definitely something you want to pick up if you are interested in doing, supporting your team or debuffing the enemies, which then again is also supporting your team I suppose, but it also has a very small knockback, but it's only 3, so not really too important. Bullseye Mastery, pretty straightforward, well, passive, increases your crit chance, which a Outlander already has quite a bit of, and increases the damage of your crits, which is very important because your charge meter is a little bit different than the other classes, because here your charge bar gives you a bonus depending on how much charge you have. That's a passive bonus, and it does include crit chance. This does mean that doing more crits with an increase to crit damage will help you out in the long run. Shattering Delay, very interesting ability. Not because it has a high initial damage or a decent AoE with a slow attack, or a slow debuff I should say, and some knockback. It's because of the target's flees for 2 seconds that is interesting to me. Because not only is it a very high chance, it also might even cause some issues, because you might let people flee or enemies flee into other enemies, and they might even have more of a problem than you had before that. Shotgun Mastery, it does boost the shotgun quite a big deal, because not only does it allow you to stun with the shotgun, it also allows you to blind more with the shotgun as well. And as you can see, it's called Shotgunner, which I'm not sure if that's a typo or the actual name of a shotgun in this game, but It is a very nice passive if you are a big fan of using the shotgun. Pistols are akimbo, as you can see. Not only does it increase the dual wielding if you spend skill points in this specific talent, it also increases the chance to execute. And it is a good thing to note that execute is also a stat that gets increased by getting more focus, which is also more mana. So definitely something you want to look out for if you are going to use 2 pistols, which I probably will do at the end of this game. Lore, my favorite tree in combination with Sigil, and Glaive Throw is one of the reasons why this is my favorite, because not only is this the ability that you start off with if you make an Outlander, it's one of my favorite abilities that the Outlander has right now of my level, because not only is it a very decent damage ability, as you can see the poison damage is quite nice, it also does more AoE damage the more you spend your skill points in this ability, because it starts to bounce a lot more. It also slows enemies, and it's a lot more reliable than, for example, the Shadow Shot for AoE damage, but more about that later. Charge Mastery, another straightforward, passive, increases your charge rate, which means you have a faster buff if you are going to start fighting, as well as you keep your buff a little bit longer. Tangling Shot, pretty much a simple snare, not a whole lot of damage. It does have the chance to snare multiple people, so definitely something that you want to pick up if you have tougher mobs to fight and you have long range weaponry. Glaive Sweep, which is an ability that you can use to stun people around you and then follow up with, for example, Rune Vault if you prefer to do that. But otherwise I would not recommend picking it up because it does force you to be in melee range. Sandstorm, this is an ability that is certainly interesting, because not only does it has a 100% chance to stun, it also has a very powerful knockback, especially because this Sandstorm constantly hits your enemy, as well as it generates charge, as you can already tell, with any enemy you hit, and does some decent damage. I will show you guys how it looks, because it does bounce quite nicely as well, and you can practically fill up rooms with this. And because of these abilities that you can spam, and because they bounce around, you can pretty much keep enemies stun locked in Sandstorm, but it does require you to have a lot of mana to pull that off. But I really enjoy this ability, so certainly a keeper for me personally. Poison Burst, very nice AoE that you don't really have to think about, and it does get buffed by the passive from Sigil. So very high chance as well, if you get some skill points in here, to basically have an AoE on every time you kill an enemy. So definitely you want to pick up if you just want to have some more AoE damage on your default attacks. Flaming Glyphs. In every game that has a glaive or a glaive-like weapon, there's going to be this signature move that you basically throw 2 glaives or 2 whatever weapon they may be, crisscross, and they also ignite enemies, as you can already tell. So very nice for kiting, and not too bad of a damage ability as well. As you can see, it does 70% of weapon DPS on the first skill point. Burning Leap is your charge forward or your charge into the battle or away from the battle, depending on how you look at it. Has a very powerful knockback, not an amazing amount of damage, and a very low chance to actually burn people as well, considering you actually have to jump into enemies. So I would use it to get out of combat instead of getting into it, but that might just be a personal thing and hasn't been the most efficient way of doing things. Dodge Mastery, pretty straightforward, just increases your dodge chance without having to put skills in dexterity. Share the Wealth, very nice as a buff, and the Outlander has the strongest buffs that I know, in fact, from all the classes, and this is one of them, because the Outlander's charge bar gives him a very powerful buff, and this increases that buff for himself, as well as give 20% of his buff to all your allies, including pets as well as other team members. So definitely you want to pick this up no matter what your build is, because you want to help out your team. Sigil, and this is where it gets interesting. Not only does it have some fairly interesting debuffs as well as buffs, it complements the other trees so well. Blade Pact is basically a very big AoE debuff on the ground. As you can see, it reduces physical armor as well as slows down the enemy, and I will show you guys how big this ability actually is. you can put this on choke points and everybody that walks into it will have this debuff. So definitely something you want to pick up, at least for 1 point. Master of the Elements is the passive that I've been talking about, because as you can already tell, it increases the elemental damage, and it does increase the poison damage twice as much. So things like Glyph and of course Poison Burst will have a higher damage output than any other elemental damage that you can put out because of Master of Elements. Bane Breath, really, this is an ability that you really don't want to get. I really despise it, because it not only does it put you at a very high risk of dying, the ability that what makes this, Bane Breath is the, the converting of enemies that die into Shadowlings, but it only happens when the damage of your poison kills the target. And you have to actually get into very close range to be able to pull it off. And it's a risk you don't want to take, especially if you have this ability, but more about that later. Shadow Shot is... People are saying this is a very potent AoE. I just disagree. I respectfully disagree. Because not only is this an unreliable AoE, because the split that your main bullet does basically fades on any solid object, it is also very annoying to use in close quarters. In open fields, it's a very powerful single target ability that you definitely want to use or pick up at least 1 point to be able to burst down bosses quite efficiently. But if you're looking for a spammable AoE move, I would really recommend Glyph Throw, and this then for single target bosses, for example. Repulsion Hex, a pretty nice summon that you can just basically buff yourself with. Stays for about a minute if you upgrade it a little bit, and it basically pushes people back and interrupts people around you. As well as including it starts to fire faster the more skill points you have, so it will become more efficient and more worth something. Shadowling Ammo, this is the ability that is basically an infinite amount of times better than the Bane Breath, and this is because the passive also includes shadowling bats that spawn, but you only have to kill people no matter what way. You just have to kill them and they will start spawning depending on your chance, of course. So definitely something you want to pick up if you want to extend the barrier between you and your enemies. Shadow Mantle is very similar to the Hex, but then it basically blocks or reflects even, missile damage that comes at you, which can be very nice because later in the game, especially in Elite, range damage is very dangerous. Stone Pact, the only powerful heal that I've seen that is actually part of a class. And not only does it heal for quite a bit, especially if you upgrade it a bit, it also increases the armor of the people that get buffed by it, as well as the damage that gets reflected to the attacker for 3 seconds. So a very powerful buff that you definitely want to pick up. Death Ritual is, the reason why your Shadowlings might actually be worth getting, because they will increase the duration, which is usually 10 seconds, and also the damage, which is definitely something you want to need if you are going to get or invest into, for example, Shadowling ammo. And this pretty much sums it up. Once again, guys, if you want to see gameplay, make sure to check out that playlist, the outro, and otherwise make sure to let me know what you want to see when this game goes live. And I am pretty certain that some people are going to pick this game up after Diablo, because it seems that Diablo has been dumbed down quite a bit. But let me know what you think about Diablo, and I am personally quite happy that I didn't pick it up, but opinions differ, and just pointing out that this is a opinion and not fact, so let's keep that straight. Anyway, guys, I'll catch you guys next time, and take care.